Hello, fellow travelers. This is Krotnip, welcoming you all back to the logbook of a simple Lindworm traveler. Today we are going to be taking a look at the latest and greatest that the Northern Tribes has to offer when it comes to their complement of ranged combatants. Let's discuss this past month's release of Ice Archers. So, who are the Ice Archers? These Varang warriors appear to be the primary ranged combatants of the Northern Tribes forces invading the southern parts of Lindworm. As you can see, these are some tall and imposing archers right there, and they are fielding some exceptionally powerful looking bows at their hands. And whether due to magic or some mundane means, they are capable of firing arrows that can to some extent freeze their enemies, and we will see the gameplay effects of this ability come to the fore soon enough. The backstory also describes the Ice Archers as being well versed in firing over friendly formations, or in the case of the traditional Varang shield wall formations, which by the way it would appear we are not going to be seeing in actual Varang units for quite some time. These warriors are capable of shooting between the shield wielding fighters when the shields collapse inward in a way to allow the arrows to pass. And this reminds at least me of a TV show where we see this type of archery done by a culture that seems to have somewhat inspired the Varangs of Lindworm. Here we have a picture of my card of the Ice Archers. Unfortunately, Corvuspelli has not, as of the recording of this video, provided us with a PDF of the newest cards, so this is what we are working with today. Not as good a resolution as standard, but I think we will get by with what we have. If we take a look at the basic stats of the Ice Archers, the first thing that we notice is the fact that this unit is surprisingly cheap. When the backstory of these shooters became available in the sourcebook and we saw the first model renders, I was thinking that this might be a really expensive unit compared to some of our more basic infantry, but actually the Ice Archers are the second cheapest unit composed of several models that we have access to, even though it does pain me a little bit to notice that this is yet another pick for that Valley of Shadow and Death that is 25 point options for the Northern Tribes. But let's just steel our hearts and forge on, I suppose. The Ice Archers benefit from the standard excellent Varang movement value of 4-3, which is quite decent when it comes to combining maneuver and fire with their bows, since if you are able to leverage your 15 stride ranged attack from where you stand, you can fire and then reposition quite a far away, and thus stopping the enemy from engaging you after you have fired at them, or if you need to take up a more aggressive position in order to gain range on your enemy, the 4-3 movement should facilitate that quite nicely. The 10 stride charge shouldn't probably be coming up all that often, but it's nice to have, and it's nice to know that you can get a jump on an enemy unit if necessary, and this might come in handy when you are looking to conquer an objective that's lightly defended or something of this nature. The Ice Archers unit is made up of 4 models and each of them have 2 wounds, so we are looking at a 8 wound unit at total. This is quite decent, and as we are going to be seeing the performance drop that the ice archers suffer at half casualties is really quite manageable. So in this way also I would consider this unit to be actually pretty sturdy for its points cost. Next we come to a rather traditional shortfall of basic infantry units in Warcrow, and that is low willpower and morale value. At only a single orange willpower, the ice archers will be failing their willpower tests that only require a single success almost 40% of the time, and they have no natural ability to pass severity 2 willpower tests under normal circumstances. Morale value 1 also means that they are incapable of activating all that many times during a turn, although I would like to point out that at least I personally, as of right now, feel that the morale value of 1 isn't so problematic on a ranged combat oriented unit, since it takes less activations to maneuver into position and there should be less stress incoming from having lost melee combats against an enemy unit that you are brawling. So for example, getting the activation token for getting the ice archers into a position still leaves you that one morale. You can take that one stress so that you can activate them again next and fire away. Obviously there are also ways of increasing this morale if you want to get more activations out of your ice archers, but maybe talk a little bit about that more later. Availability 1 seems to be quite a nice decision by CP, since at 25 points and all the things that the ice archers are capable of doing, I do consider them to be quite points effective a unit, and having access to several might mean that our units, or rather our companies, sorry, would not be as versatile in their makeup, since I for one would be probably tempted to include that second unit of ice archers quite often. This unit is peculiar in that it lacks any keywords that actually have a important effect on how the unit acts. You are just working with the infantry and varang tags that are mostly important when it comes to what types of characters can join the unit, even though obviously we are about to see what the Celica and the Tattooist are going to be doing for our Varang units, and there might be some synergies there also. But nothing like Elite or Preferred Terrain or Scout or anything. This is just box standard infantry archer unit, and that's it. When it comes to the conquest value, the ice archers at above half strength actually have a decent basic conquest value of 1, but it pays to note that unlike somebody like the Tundra Marauders or the Orc Hunters, the Ice Archers actually shed this point of conquest when they suffer half casualties, so they are decent enough at holding positions when they haven't suffered all that much damage, but they will stop providing their own natural conquest after 2 or 3 of them go down, depending on whether you have an officer leading the unit or not. Since the passive abilities that the Ice Archers have access to are rather important to how the unit acts and how to evaluate its capabilities, I was thinking that we can start or go next to the said abilities and then come back to the attack and defensive characteristics of the Ice Archers. The first passive ability that this Varang archer unit has access to is called Blue Arrows, and it's a passive skill. If the Ice Archers declare a ranged attack against an enemy that is already suffering from the slowed state, then they automatically inflict a single wound upon their target. This is a slight boost to the unit's damage output, and it's going to be especially helpful against those units that are relying on excessive amount of block symbols in order to stop incoming damage, since this automatic wound allows you to bypass such defenses. It's not 100% clear to me by this wording how the timing of this wound infliction works. If I had to guess, I would say that okay, you deal it immediately when you declare the attack as a separate step, which would then mean that the opponent gets the chance to activate, for example, the medic ability of the war surgeon in order to try and stop it. But if somebody said to me that okay, this wound is inflicted during the switchy step, or it's just added to the tally at the end of the Ice Archer's attack, I would be fine either way. Hopefully we will be seeing some type of clarity on this going forward. The nice thing about the Blue Arrow's ability is that the Ice Archers are capable of triggering it all by themselves, since they have a ranged attack switch that causes slowed state upon their enemies. Even though unfortunately for them the timing of this switch ability and the blue arrows works in a way that when you are first firing at the enemy you won't be able to collect the benefits of blue arrows unless you had another way of already triggering slowed upon the enemy and the enemy failing to clear it before you get to fire. But this all in all isn't an ability that I am going to be bending over backwards to get to work. It's nice to have when it triggers, but unless I'm going to try and assassinate a piece that's already very close to death anyway, this isn't going to be something that I'm going to be trying to get done in all situations. The second ability is called Frozen Rain, and it's also a passive ability, and it basically is the gameplay equivalent of the Ice Archers firing over their friendly targets to hit their enemies. So the Ice Archers can ignore allied units when they are drawing line of sight. This is a rather nice ability in that it stops your enemies from using your own melee units and other formations from being screens that can stop the Ice Archers from firing at their enemies, and it also helps you since you don't have to worry about getting the Ice Archers trapped behind your friendly units and thus being unable to fire. Yes, if you are firing at an enemy unit that's already engaged by one of your units, you are still inflicting stress upon your own unit, and yes, there is a chance that the enemy will be gaining cover from your friendly models, but even so, the option is still there. And I would imagine that there are going to be times when your opponent fails to realize the danger of Frozen Rain and they are moving some of their, for example, support pieces or leaders behind the front line thinking that they are safe because, let's say, orc hunters and battle scarred are forming a line that the Ice Archers are supposed to be seeing through, but in reality, thanks to the Frozen Rain, they are actually able to shoot these squishy targets and thus knock out some of the enablers that your opponent is going to be relying on. Funnily enough, the wording of the Frozen Rain is such that it not only applies when performing ranged attacks but actually all of the time. I personally haven't come up with a notable use case for this ability, this ability's effect beyond the obvious, beyond ranged attacks, but I am pretty sure that in time and with some creative efforts by the Northern Tribes community, we can figure something out where one can also use this ability in another way. For example, I was today thinking that something that might work would be a case where, uh, let's say, a combination of a piece of forest terrain and your friendly unit is stopping you from, or could be stopping you from charging an enemy unit that's already in combat, and then you were able to see the enemy through your own unit and then charge it through the forest but that's a quite a special circumstances for all of these geometrical pieces to be in the right position, and you also wanting to charge into melee. But hey, something like that might happen, and let's see if there are more potential use cases going forward. All right, now let's get to the meat and potatoes of the performance characteristics of the Ice Archers. Let's talk about their ranged attack. As you can see, the Ice Archer's ranged attack benefits from a pretty decent range of 15 strides. It's actually longer than the ranged attacks of someone like the Hegemonist Pioneers or the new shooting unit that's name I'm not even gonna try and pronounce. So that's decent enough. Not quite as long a range as with the Siennan Archers, but not that far off anyway. Also, the Ice Archer's damage roll or the attack dice roll when they are performing this ranged attack is decent enough, at least in my eyes. Getting a red dice, 2 orange dice, and a yellow dice is decent enough, and it would appear that we are getting additional ways of reinforcing this potential damage output with the new variant characters that are about to be released. I would also like to note that I am personally quite fond of using my Hersir with the Ice Archers, since Berserker Rage does not state that it can only be used in melee combat, so there is nothing stopping you from augmenting this damage output by suffering units on your wounds on your Ice Archer unit. And as the Ice Archers themselves are a rather cheap unit that isn't supposed to be seeing a frontline combat all that much, suffering wounds in order to deliver them doesn't feel like such a bad trade for them. In addition to being capable of dealing traditional damage through these dice, the Ice Archers also have a potentially powerful crowd control inducing switch ability that feeds off the special symbols of the roll. This switch causes the slowed state upon the target of the attack or another enemy unit within 8 strides of them. So potentially, if you can catch a whole clump of enemy units with your Ice Archers, targeting the middle one of them can actually end up having the effect of you delivering slow to 2, 3, maybe even in some fantastical scenario 4 enemy units at a time. Yes, using this ability is concurrent upon you getting enough specials to do so, but remember that if you are, for example, running a Hersir with them, there's also the possibility of using the Berserker Rage ability to produce not a success but rather a special, if that's going to be more important for your plans going forward. While funnily enough, the amount of specials that the Ice Archers are capable of producing on average actually goes ever so slightly up when the unit suffers half casualties, since the only downgrade that they suffer in their ranged attack performance is that one of the or the only red dice of the roll becomes an orange dice. Do notice that the switch becomes way less powerful at this point, since it'll turn into a double special switch, and now you also lose the ability to target units beyond the primary target, so that's a pretty big deal there. This also to me speaks in the favor of adding a officer type character to the unit if they are going to be important for your plans, since that increases the threshold of casualties that you need to suffer before you see any impairment of ability from 2 models to 3 models. So that's pretty nice also. The Ice Archers are also capable of producing a decent enough amount of hollow symbols with their ranged attack, but unfortunately they have no natural way of accessing those symbols for anything. So look for any characters that might be able to help out there, or simply accept the fact that the hollow symbols aren't going to be doing anything for our shooters over here. The Ice Archers also as a basic infantry unit lack the ability to use any push modifiers, so they won't be improving their performance on their own. But again, there might be a character that might be able to help out with that going forward. Then again, at 25 points, we do need to remember that we are talking about a rather cheap unit that's easy to include, and it can cause disproportionate harm to your enemy, either via sniping something weak and important, or via crowd controlling some of the more sturdy stuff. So whether or not one should be adding a character to the unit is a good question that probably needs to be decided upon on a case-by-case basis. Future Grotnip here. I had to pause the video since I was listening through all the things that I said before sending the video out to YouTube, and I noticed that there are a couple of small things that I want to address here and now before continuing the presentation. Firstly, my English as not mother's tongue played a trick on me, and I was previously trying to say that a thing was contingent on another, not something else that I said, so sorry about that. The second thing that I want to take note of is the fact that I think that we need to recalibrate the way that we take a look at ranged damage output of units, since even though it's quite understandable to put something like the damage output of the Ice Archers right next to the damage output of some of our melee units, but even if we forget about range, maneuverability, the ability to reach and touch enemy units that otherwise would be entirely safe, we also do need to remember that when we are performing ranged attacks against our enemies are unable to use switch abilities against these attacks, and these can actually have a tremendous impact on how much damage your unit is capable of inflicting. If, for example, we are attacking a unit of hegemony bucklermen with a unit of orc hunters, the amount of damage that we are actually able to inflict is disproportionate to the average damage output of the orc hunters, if we compare to a ranged unit like the Ice Archers, since in our example over here, the bucklermen are able to employ their switch that allows them to turn special symbols into blocks. Then again, if we take the Ice Archers and fire in our imaginary example at the same unit, while the average damage output of the Ice Archers is lower than that of the Orc Hunters performing the melee attack, but in this latter instance, we are denying the Hegemonians the ability to add those additional block symbols via their specials. And this might be especially important when it comes to somebody like Drago being attached to the unit. So yes, the range damage output of the Ice Archer seems on paper to be not that amazing, but it's actually, when fielded on the battlefield, a tad higher when we're dealing with units that are relying to lesser or greater extent on switch abilities that cancel some of the incoming damage. And obviously, if we have an enemy unit that has weak ability to produce blocks, but plenty of powerful switch abilities to mitigate damage, then those types of units are going to be especially vulnerable to our frozen arrows. Okay, sorry about that. Back to the scheduled programming. Funnily enough, the melee performance of the Ice Archers is exactly the same as that of the Varang Tantra Marauders, which some people have argued is lackluster, but that I have found to be rather decent enough with support from characters, in my case usually the set Hersir character. The Ice Archers are rolling 3 orange dice and getting an automatic success on their melee attacks, which means that they are producing a moderate amount of melee damage, and their ceiling is extremely low. If and when the unit suffers casualties, two of these orange dice turn into yellow ones, which will leave the damage ceiling exactly the same, but unfortunately they will suffer a impairment to their average damage output because of the fact that the yellow dice are less keen on providing successes than the orange ones. Then again, there is a marked increase in the amount of special symbols that the unit is producing with their melee attacks at below half strength, which can, in the right hands, mean that the unit's combat effectiveness remains more or less the same. I seem to remember that I once calculated that a unit of Tantrum Marauders accompanied by a Hersir will provide almost exactly the same amount of expected damage equivalents, whether they are at full strength or at below half strength, due to the fact that the Hersir has a double special switch that allows their unit to remove a block from the enemy, and the yellow dice will be providing those symbols quite nicely. The Ice Archer's melee attack also has some access to hollow symbols, but again, just as with the ranged attack, there is no natural way of making use of these symbols, and also there is no push modifier available. The defense breakdown of the Ice Archers looks a bit different from the Tantrum Marauders, but actually when it comes to the number of expected blocks, it's pretty close to being the same here also. At 3 blue dice and a black dice, the Ice Archers are on average rolling about close to 2 blocks per roll, and they have a decent enough ceiling of 4 potential blocks. Then again, these types of rolls that are relying on rolling several dice that aren't all that great in and of themselves can also have the potential for producing 0 blocks at the most inopportune moment, but hey, that's a dice game for ya. At half strength, the amount of defensive dice goes down to 2 blue, which means that the Ice Archers fall down to average of 1 and maximum of 2, so they are really frail at that point. The blue dice and especially the black dice are capable of also providing the unit with a decent amount of special symbols, and there's also some potential access for hollow ones, but unfortunately again there are no natural ways for the Ice Archers to make any use of these, so look for future unit attachments to take advantage of these symbols, or just leave them be and focus on the fact that your enemy has just wasted an activation to target a 25-point unit, and they may not get more than 1 or 2 Varangs killed out of their attack, which should be fine by you under most circumstances. All in all, the Ice Archers seem like a reliable basic ranged unit for the Northern Tribes. I really like them in that they do offer our forces enough potential damage output, maneuverability, battlefield presence, and crowd control potential to warrant their inclusion, but they aren't amazing at any of these things enough to make the unit expensive to field, so it's really easy to throw in the 25-point unit, and you don't even need to consider adding a character unless you are looking to leverage them in a more meaningful way. As of the recording of this video, the ranged unit complement of the Northern Tribes is really lackluster, and I have seen this have the compounding effect that the enemy can move their supportive pieces and weak defending pieces quite freely in the middle of their formation. As long as they are able to avoid our ambushers, there has been little ranged threat that they have had to contend with, but I'm really happy to see that now those days are going to be over, and any enemy support or ranged unit not taking care of its positioning and not minding its distance from the ice archers is going to be met by a frozen rain of blue arrows, puns intended. And thus you can keep them honest and force the enemy to tighten up their formation and maybe suffer lackluster payoffs to their strategy as a result. All in all, I really am happy with the ice archers as they seem to be. They feel Northern tribes through and through. They seem like noble and ferocious Varank warriors who are capable at their main job, that is ranged combat, but they don't necessarily need to shine away from melee either, and we already have access to one or two excellent Varank characters that we can attach to the unit, and soon enough we should have several others to make use of. So I, for one, am going to be fielding these warriors in my warbands rather commonly going forward. And at this point, we are starting to reach the time with our Northern Tribes forces that we are going to be struggling to include everything or even most of the things that we want to in a single company. So I'm really interested to see what are the Ice Archers going to be driving away from my standard roster, and is there something that's going to be replacing them in turn going forward. Okay, a short and sweet analysis for a basic and good ranged combat unit for the Northern Tribes. Keep them coming, CB. Safe travels to you all, fellow travelers.